Hello there, I am That Gamer Guy and welcome back to another video. Firstly, let's address the hairy elephant in the room. I'm trialling something new. It's a work in progress. Please bear with me. But anyways, it's Pride season. Well, sort of. I know it's finished in the US and it's almost finished in the UK. But Brighton Pride, one of the UK's biggest prides and my personal favourite pride, is happening this week, or at least the week that I'm filming this. And during Pride season on this channel, I like to reflect on how far we've come as a community and discuss where I think we might be in the future. And this video is going to be a kind of spiritual successor to a video that I released nearly 3 years ago now, entitled The Future of Pride. So I'll link the video somewhere, but you don't have to watch it as I'm going to be discussing similar opinions to those that I held in that video. Got it? Good? Okay, let's go. So I think it's fair to say that in the last 10 years, and certainly in the last 5 years, public exposure to the LGBTQ+ community has increased significantly. And as part of that process, various aspects of our community have found their voice and found a platform to bring awareness to their identity. So let me elaborate. For decades, public discussion of the queer community focused almost exclusively on gay men. Now, lesbian, bisexual and transgender identity was part of that discussion, but there are many people who don't feel represented by the now dated LGBT acronym. Within the queer community, it is almost universally agreed that our gender and our sexuality are not binary, they are on a spectrum. And because our gender and our sexuality are on a spectrum, there are many gender and sexual identities that people identify with, and these have become our labels. Now I'd like to discuss what I perceive to be the positives and negatives of labels. Firstly, one could make the argument that labels make everything a lot easier. A label will have a clear definition, and somebody can say, I am that. That label represents who I am. And as a consequence of this, sub-communities can form around that label. The intersexual community, the asexual community, the pansexual community. Labels allow people to interact with others like them, be it in real life or online. And all of what I've just said is undeniably a good thing. But I would argue that in some cases, labels do more harm than good. Now please hear me out. It is labels that are responsible for the increasing divides within the queer community at large. It seems to be the case that our sub-communities are becoming more and more hostile to each other. Cisgender against transgender, monosexual against polysexual, monoamorous against polyamorous, and this might be because these sub-community factions can become very exclusive of others. When you immerse yourself almost entirely with people that identify the same way that you do, with similar backstories and similar opinions, you tend to become very insular and ignorant of others that aren't like you. Not only this, but people can start to believe that their story, their rights, their struggle is more important than those of others. Now, I've seen this countless times online on platforms like Twitter or Reddit, where two opposing members of the queer community have tried to outstruggle each other. A transgender, asexual individual could never know the struggles of a cisgender, pansexual, non-binary individual. More and more people seem to be using their labels as both a weapon and as armour. But my argument for all of this is debatable. Whilst undoubtedly there are elements of truth to what I've said, I haven't factored in societal issues or the effects of non-queer people on queer people. But, and here is where I think I am wholeheartedly correct, if gender and sexuality are these infinite spectrums, then surely labels act only to restrict us. The very act of somebody coming out as homosexual places a label on that individual that tells society and themselves who they are. Perhaps if that label of homosexual didn't exist, that individual would feel more freedom in their sexuality. The same, of course, can be said of the label heterosexual, and indeed every other label that exists. Labels work to help define us, but they also work to restrict us. Since I came out when I was 18, I have identified as bisexual. I've made videos in the past on this channel discussing my bisexuality, and if I had to sit down and tick a box to say which sexuality I am, that is the one that I would tick. But that is not necessarily how I identify anymore. Nowadays, if somebody asks me how I identify, I usually say, I know this sounds pretentious, but I don't like using labels. So whilst one could make the argument that labels make things simpler, one could also make the argument that no labels would make things simpler still. With no labels to tell ourselves and others who we are, people are free to identify as themselves. So those are my thoughts on the matter, and thank you for watching. Please feel free to leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments. And with that, I'll say goodbye. Please like and subscribe if you want to see more. If there's anything you'd like me to discuss in a future video, then leave your suggestions down below. And as ever, I hope to see you guys next time. But until then,